Harry went on another interview podcast. Why? We don't want any more of this. Please make it stop. And this time it was actually kind of largely ignored by the press. I've noticed this a lot more recently. Harry and Meghan's stuff isn't getting the same press coverage that it once was. Just like Meghan's sales are not what they once were, and the Netflix deal is no more, Things are fizzling out, including the press interest. So it makes perfect sense that very few press outlets covered Harry's silly little interview, because who wants to listen to the same nonsense over again? It's boring. He even speaks in a boring fashion. It's a very monotone, boring voice. Who even cares anymore about this stuff? But in the context of Harry, who is not as thirsty as the Meg for attention, but he's pretty thirsty for a positive public image. He's thirsty for the adoring attention and positive press that comes with a positive public image that he misses, that he once enjoyed and has no longer. This was a desperate choice, this podcast, because it was Hasan Minhaj's podcast, and he's a comedian. Harry clearly was not up to task with wit or comedic timing, so it became awkward really quickly. I think Harry thought that he would be able to keep up because he thinks that he's charming and witty, and maybe sometimes he manages to be amongst certain audience. But this time he came off really cringe and really awkward. Like Harry couldn't get the joke or couldn't really tell where Hasan was going with things or what he should do or how he should answer things. Like he couldn't quite get there, and he couldn't quite formulate witty responses and banter and stuff like that. It looked like he was trying to figure out what he should do or say to be liked and get a positive response. That sort of nervous, insecure energy was kind of oozing from Harold. Hasan is quick. He's a quick talker. He talks kind of fast, and he's a quick thinker, and he's quick on his feet, because he does stand up. So people like that are pretty good at keeping things going. They don't have a lot of dead air, and Harry's not. He's not that quick. And so it resulted in many, many times where Harry was hesitating, and then when he finally tried to jump in and say something, anything, it was right at the moment that Hasan picked things back up because there was too much dead air from Harry, sort of just trying to figure things out, like a loading page on a website, just buffering a great deal of the interview, trying to figure out something to say. And Hasan had to kind of pick up the slack and sometimes be like, okay, well, let's reframe, let's pivot, let's make this work. Let's move on. But anyway, before we get into the interview step by step, I would like to invite you to subscribe if you have not yet already. Click the hype button and the like button, but only if you want to. So in the intro, before Harry gets there, Hasan is kind of explaining who Harry is and stuff like that, like a normal intro before an interview. And he's being very generous to Harold. Like, I think that this was actually something that the Meg wrote and Hasan just read, or like his team kind of maybe changed a little bit to put it in his voice, but it hit the points that Harry and Meghan wanted to have hit because it was very generous. But then he mentions the Parents Network as Harry's big launch last year. What? This is very peculiar. Hath he not researched? Evidently not, because remember, despite Harry and Meghan and Archewell trying to make Parents Network their crowning moment as independent philanthropists, they've already quit it and dissolved it, and referring those handful of Parents Network members to Parents Together. So Parents Network is no more. And I guess poor Hasan and his team don't know it. Either that or Harry and his team went ahead and let this be in the brief that Hasan got. They left it in there and he just read it aloud. I don't know. Maybe this was filmed a long time ago. But someone has dropped the ball here and it doesn't look good because Parents Network is no longer in Harry's court. It's no longer part of his stuff. He's not in control of it anymore. It's not his thing anymore. So what's going on? When Harry arrives, the icebreaker is, what do you binge watch, Harry? Harry cannot think of anything. And then he awkwardly says it's classified. Ugh. Could he lack any more personality? Oh my gosh. He asks, what's the most American thing that you do now that you've lived here for 5 years? Harry says surf. No. How ignorant. Surfing actually dates back to ancient Polynesians. So I don't know that that should be classified as something that makes Harry seem American or as an American thing that he does. I don't think that tracks at all. Also, at this moment, it cut to footage of him surfing in a wave pool, which, as we discussed, is more like a practice thing, a training tool. And the history of surfing is rooted in symbiosis with the waves and a spiritual connection with the sea. So like hardcore surfers or people who surf in that real, true way would consider what Harry does in a pool to be not on the same level at all, to not be real surfing. And Hasan, to his credit, does note that surfing is also a huge part of Australian culture. He doesn't really identify it as an American cultural thing, and I would agree. It is not really, if you think about it, quintessentially American. But then, because Hasan is a comedian, he asks Harry to demonstrate his best American accent by giving him some sentence prompts, and this gets too cringe too fast. They even cut it. They edited it. Because there's chops in this part. They edited out his attempts, or he gave up, or he wasn't game. Either way, it was horrible. It was terrible. And this is my point. Harry's just not very funny, and he doesn't really have the charisma to make this not super cringe. The secondhand embarrassment flew off the charts right away with this segment. Hasan pokes a little bit of fun of his woe is me attitude from Sparry by using this quote, which, to be fair, Harry does chuckle at. But still, it seems to lose out on the reality that this is a theme with Harry that contributes greatly to his unlikability, that he has this woe is me vibe over things that are not actually anything to feel bad about. But on to more serious questions. They talk about men's mental health, and Harry says that social media is hindering the progress, but Hasan challenges this, that the internet has actually widened access and information about mental health. This point is entirely lost on Harry. Nuanced thinking is not his strong suit, as we know from his previous actions, but the irony of saying that no, social media is ruining mental health and taking away progress while on a podcast that is accessed online via YouTube and other platforms, for example, like, what the heck, Harry? There is positives to platforms that open up conversations and access. So he would have a lot more credibility in this arena to actually acknowledge that there are positives, of course. But he does not. He does more pointing at problems throughout a great deal of this interview, but especially this segment. And he doesn't put forth a solution that he believes will help or change or fix the whole internet and youth and social media harms subject matter that they discuss, and including mental health stuff, like men's mental health and social media and digital age, all this stuff that, he talks about every time. But what's frustrating is that once again, we have Harry pointing at the problem and talking about the problem, but not once is he thinking or talking about solutions. He's not like, we're proposing X, Y, and Z to help solve this problem. These negative impacts of social media could be helped by this, that, and the other thing. And until he does that, we should give zero credence to what he has to say about this subject matter, because he's unable to look past the problem and find a solution. He's not helping anything. Hasan also has kids, and so the conversation kind of evolves into this space of like, how are we addressing digital access with our kids and balancing things like social media and access to technology like smartphones and things like that with protecting our kids and their innocence, and there are dangers online and stuff like that. In that space of the conversation, Harry is asked in a more real context of like, well, what is your game plan when your kids get bigger? Hasan asks him, how are you planning to navigate this? Which I think is a good question. Thanks for asking that, because here is where we could get some insight from Harry of somebody who has claimed repeatedly and told us over and over again, Harry has, that he has pored over research and discussed with experts many times and met with families. You would think that Harry would be well positioned to have formulated a really good plan, a very strategic approach for his own family, for this impending problem of his kids eventually having or wanting to have more access to the interwebs. Does Harry have a plan, is the question. And the answer is no. No, not really. He says we have to hope that the situation is not the same as it is today when our kids get bigger. So his plan is wishful thinking. His plan is thinking that things will magically get better on their own and everyone else will figure it out so that he doesn't have to. That sounds like his life so far, I think. Growing up a prince, I'm sure somebody will figure this out by the time it matters to me, won't they? It also sounds like a really bad parenting strategy. Well, hopefully I just won't have to deal with that. Hopefully it'll be worked out by someone else within the next 5 to 10 years. What? As a parent, it's annoying for me to listen to this because at the very least, the bare minimum here, Harry should be focusing on a solution of education. At the very least, an awareness campaign, education campaigns. I mean, like, not to always draw comparisons, but Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, have launched information campaigns and education campaigns on like the early years projects and mental health, suicide prevention, homelessness, environmentalism. They launch education campaigns because if people are better informed, they can make better decisions. A lot of people aren't aware of certain things. And by spreading the education first, you help establish a common vocabulary about the issues so that people can talk about it better and understand when policy does come up. They can understand a little bit more of what they're hearing about and make a more educated decision, but also then they can have agency to become more aware of a problem or an issue, not just problems, but just topical issues. Things like, raising young children and how to be supportive in that arena and how to do it well, or how to apply the research and information that we do have to our real lives, stuff like that. So education campaigns is always a great place to start when there's a societal, social, or cultural issue, subject matter that affects a lot of us. Information campaigns are the way to go, like with nutrition and stuff. This is stuff that we know information campaigns do matter and make a difference. And I think of it in terms of like the digital age and social media and potential social media harms. Like, even if you don't go to the extremes that Harry and Meghan do, of just like social media is a hard place to be when you are not fully mentally developed. You can put too much weight on it. You can care a little too much about it. People do get addicted to their phones and social media, and people do make weird choices based on it. And the internet is a cesspool in a lot of ways. A good percentage of it is a crappy place. There is good things on the internet too, though. And so I like to think of it as the same way that we keep our kids safe in other areas. We keep our kids safe from weirdos and injuries and cavities and germs and getting sick and breaking the law by educating them. We tell them to wash their hands. We teach them they have to wear their seatbelt and wear a helmet when they're riding a bicycle or a scooter, or a motorized bicycle or scooter, to wear a helmet. We make them brush their teeth. We teach them to not do stupid stuff. We teach them about stranger danger. Teaching our kids works to help keep them safe. Why are we pretending like that's not something we know works and kids are capable of? Harry acting like this is all just, we have to do something really big and outward, is negating the parental opportunity and community, as he always says, it's a community problem, to just educate and teach kids and trust that if they know the dangers of something, they oftentimes can learn to help keep themselves safe. Kids can learn to not get cavities by brushing well and flossing their teeth. Kids can learn to eat a balanced diet and get exercise. Kids can learn to stay away from strangers and what to do in certain situations. Kids can learn to always wear their seatbelt and their helmet to keep themselves safe. They can, and they do. So acting like they can't understand that or learn how to protect themselves is not giving them enough credit. And it annoys me to no end to listen to Harry talk about this problem and not take the opportunity to advocate as a starting point for parents to educate families and kids of the realities of the internet and social media. Why Archewell or Harry and Meghan or anybody not yet launched an information campaign about the dangers of these things, since they're so concerned with the dangers of these things, as just at least taking a step in the right direction of like, this is the solution that we're starting with, folks. Information campaigns, awareness. Teach people about algorithms and tracking and how the internet will show you more of what you watch or click on, how the internet will take you down a rabbit hole if you let it. Teach them how to determine reliable sources from not. Educate them on the dangers and the weirdness of chat rooms and AI and chatbots. Teach them to not share personal information. Teach them to not believe everything that they see, to be disciplined and not let curiosity take over when it comes to the internet, to have discipline and boundaries for themselves because of the potential risks, not because we say so, but because there are real risks. Duh. Make it an information campaign. Do something, Harry and Meghan. Don't just keep coming onto these interviews and podcasts and pointing at the problem and repeating that it's a problem. It makes me mad at this point, because it would help. It would give parents a starting point. It would make them feel less powerless, and it would obviously be educational for everyone. It would give kids a little bit of a safety net as they grow into internet access and change how they view it from the get-go. When we learn as kids how important it is to wear your seatbelt, it usually sticks with us throughout life. Dental hygiene is another example. It sticks with us. Keeping your house tidy sometimes, that sticks with you. Reading is another one. If you read a lot with your children, then they will be lifelong readers and or capable readers. Even if they don't love reading as a hobby, they can read. Same could go for this. We could culturally shift how children view the internet and their understanding of it and their willingness to trust it and feel safe on it if we change how we talk about it. And Harry and Meghan could have, by now, developed a really, really good quality information campaign about this and rolled it out to schools and doctors' offices and over the internet and be talking about it in places like this. And instead, they're just pointing at the problem still. Harry could be focusing his energy and time and money into launching an education and awareness campaign to roll out this information. But instead, he's just like, it's a problem, look at it. Look at it. It's a problem in a lot of ways. It's a problem in this way and that way and the other way. And look at what a big problem it is. It's a problem, all right. But next, Hasan asks about children's digital rights. Like, he points out that we don't really have like a framework at this point in time on protecting children's digital rights. Things like families recording a class performance, for example, that includes all the kids in the class. And some families want to just keep that private for themselves, which is fine. But some families are putting it, through the digital spheres or onto social media. And we don't have really a framework on how that can be shared or protected or whether or not that should be allowed, things like that. Like, what if some families don't want their kids out there in those types of situations? Now, that's a complex issue and one that's way over Harry's head, but I found this moment in time to feel very ironic with Meghan Markle's recent Balenciaga flirtation. He asks pointedly, should parents post their kids online? And Harry kind of ignores the fact that his wife regularly posts photos of their kids online. He doesn't acknowledge this. And they also ignore Meghan's use of Instagram, which generates profit for her and for Meta, which simply feels hypocritical. If they did acknowledge that Meghan uses social media and posts the kids' pictures sometimes on social media and how they are wrestling with those choices and balancing their alleged values that are very anti-social media and pro-protecting kids online with posting pictures of their kids online and making Meta money through Meghan's use of Instagram. How do they acknowledge that? How do they balance that? That should be acknowledged in a discussion like this. And if they did or had, then it would help avoid this feeling that it's a very hypocritical situation. Even just to say something like, I think as adults and with businesses or things like that, we're not as emotionally invested in social media. We're able to use it in a way that's very compartmentalized as adults. He could take that sort of a stance of I think that adults should be allowed to use social media. It's when it comes to youth that we really need to focus. Even just that, acknowledging that and putting that to rest would kind of erase or soften the hypocriticalness of this whole situation. But completely ignoring it while in the same conversation complaining about Meta in this program. The whole thing feels insane. Like, are we in the Twilight Zone? Why are we ignoring this big elephant in the room? Then Harry says that he thinks people will eventually just not let kids on social media at all, which, like, okay, duh, whatever, fine. But then really, what is his point? Then what is the point of this if he thinks ultimately everybody's just going to be like, no, nobody's going to let their kids online? So then would that not erase the problem? I don't understand. Just kind of confusing because he doesn't come in with like a solution and talking points, practiced points that he wants to stand by. And most importantly, solutions, suggestions. Instead, he's just kind of like saying whatever it feels like. At the end, Harry mentions a research study, which he's mentioned before, done by Parents Together, or Parents Together funded it. I'm not sure. But it had researchers each spend 50 hours of time posing as children in AI chat rooms with AI chatbots. And they found that every 5 minutes was a harmful interaction. Let me preface what I'm about to say with the obvious that AI should not be trusted with kids. Kids should not be using AI chats. Obviously, they shouldn't be in chat rooms, okay? But this research study, he's mentioned a few times, lacks actual concrete information the way Harry describes it, first off. But also, I feel like there are a lot of problems with this research study. What classifies a harmful interaction? Who's deciding the criteria here? And what were these adults posing as children doing or saying? What were the ground rules? What were the parameters? How do we know that they were accurately recreating a hypothetical response from a child or prompts from children? Like, how? Because anytime I think I know what a kid might think or say or what they're going to ask or how they might answer a question, I'm almost always wrong. Kids are kids. If I'm like, what are you thinking about? Because they're sitting there and they look serious or something. Or I'm like, oh my God, are you okay? They're totally fine. They're thinking about like Super Mario Brothers or something. And it's just, kids do not think the same way we do. They do not even have the same stuff in their heads as we do. Their brains look different than ours because they are not yet fully developed. They are in a completely different state of mind to us almost all of the time. And if you chat with children regularly, you will see that and know that. Their imaginations are running wild and they're thinking about little kid stuff. So I call horse hockey on an adult being able to adequately recreate the prompts of a child in an AI chat with any degree of accuracy at all. So these results may very well be extraordinarily skewed. This is not a research study. I mean, I can't see any parameters that they would have put into this research study that would eliminate the variables of an adult mind being completely different than a child's. Even just the way an adult would convey a given idea or feeling or thought is going to be completely different than the verbiage that a child will choose. So I do not see how these research people could possibly accurately pose as children. Just like how kids cannot accurately pose as adults. Our brains are so different. And so I'm not like discrediting this research study as a whole. I wouldn't be surprised if we could categorize this harmful interaction every 5 minutes. Sure, if you look at the internet as a whole, you could find harmful interactions or harmful information or, alarming stuff every 5 minutes really easily. But the way this study was set up does not feel like it's actually academic, unbiased, and a valid representation of what a child might experience in an AI chat room. Like, it just doesn't seem that way to me, because how could it possibly? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I'm not discrediting the message or the point of the research study, but I do have massive skepticism about the value of its data and the veracity and the verity of this study in general. I don't think we should just take Harry's word for it for sure. But also this study, it doesn't feel like it took into account this, just like, duh, hello, what do you mean? These research study people, these researchers, posed as children for 50 hours? There's no way that that data is not skewed towards a more adult tone. You know what I mean? Because duh, we're adults. I mean, like, think about, like, even just kids' movies. Sometimes there's the occasional a joke thrown in there for a grown-up, or an innuendo or something thrown in there for a grown-up that you don't notice as a child. And then you go back and you watch the movie as an adult and you're like, oh my gosh, they put that joke in there? I can't believe that. But you never noticed it as a child. Those types of things make me think it's just utterly impossible for an adult to pose as a kid. It just is. And to adequately interpret something the same way a child would. Like, no, I'm sorry. No. But it also feels like these types of research studies are still just pointing at problems. And citing a study like this is just pointing at problems again, Harry. Instead of putting time and money into developing and running simulations on potential safeguards. Because we know the internet will rabbit hole. And we know the internet does weird stuff. And we know the internet has cesspools about it. So, of course, that will inherently be part of all the internet's makeup, including AI. Whether it's social media, whether it's AI, whether it's chat rooms, there's going to be a certain fraction of it, a certain percentage of it that is disturbing, dark, bad, wrong, deplorable. We know. So why are we doing studies like this? Instead, we could be investing that same time and money into solutions, some sorts of safeguards. Let's develop those things instead of this, because this doesn't help anything. Pretending to be a child online and see how dark it can be doesn't help solve the problem. Not even a little bit. We know. Most people in my generation, already had a lot of negative experiences online and keep our kids off online because, we're like, yeah, I can't believe I had access to the internet when I did. That was not wise. So we don't need more proof of how crappy the internet can be, or how bad or scary or terrible or dangerous. We don't need proof of that. What we need is people figuring out solutions, creating awareness campaigns and education for our children so that we help mold their brains into understanding how dangerous and bad the internet can be, just like we mold their brains into, you have to wear your seatbelt in a car, okay? You can't speed when you drive. You can't be dumb. We make sure our kids learn that and grow with those rules and parameters. So we should make sure our kids learn, grow, and develop with parameters and expectations around the internet so that they can be smart about it, because they will be if we teach them. This nonsense that Harry's doing is not ever going to lead us to a path of improvements, but he could, with research studies being conducted and funded. Then instead, they could work towards developing and running simulations on apps or safeguards or other things like that to see what are some creative ways that we can try to create some bumpers for the internet for people. Why not do that instead? Maybe it's too hard. I don't know. But this shit is worthless. Okay? Just my opinion. Anyway, towards the end, they kind of circle back to some more lighthearted questions. Makes sense? When Hasan asked, what do your kids think you do? Harry got really uncomfortable. He got really flustered. This question kind of caught him off guard and he didn't know how to answer it. After he stumbles for a bit, he's like, they know I help people. Cut the cap, Harry. You don't help anybody. You annoy them to no end. Hasan asks, what do you do to get knighted? And Harry awkwardly says that we can talk about this off camera. What? What are you even saying, Harold? Okay? Just give a cheeky non-answer and move on. You don't know what it takes and you have no connection here. What are you even talking about? Back up. Hasan gives a very thoughtful and quality answer on why he started the podcast. I mean, really top marks. His response was great. but it also showed Harry up. Harry didn't give thoughtful quality answers for anything, which is frustrating, but Hasan did. So if you're interested, go give it a watch, but you'll be catching all the secondhand embarrassment from Harry the whole time, so just a warning. So I did a little sleuthing because this was bothering me. This was filmed about 1 week after Jane Goodall's passing, they say at the end of the interview, according to Hasan. So Harry and Meghan announced that they were like passing off responsibility for Parents Network at the Project Healthy Minds Gala, literally days after he filmed this. So the timeline is Harry films this interview with Hasan. They give away Parents Network at the Project Healthy Minds Gala, basically, it's being absorbed. I made a video explaining it. I can link it for you. And then this got released a couple weeks later. This interview went live a few weeks later. So, just as an aside, Harry's team could have let Hasan's team know that Parents Network is no more for their post-production, but maybe it was already all done or something. I don't know, but it was kind of inconsiderate to not, there's no way Harry didn't know that they were giving away Parents Network when he did this interview. So it was pretty weird to have a lot of the push around it to be about Parents Network when it's basically gone away. It's been absorbed by Parents Together. Like I said, I'll link the video for you, but that is how the timeline of that went down because I was really confused about that, so that's what I found out. Thank you for joining me for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a happy day ahead. I'll see you next time. Bye!